Jada's breath caught in her throat as she stared at the glowing screen of Donovan's phone, her fingers trembling. It had been an ordinary day until this. She had never meant to snoop, never intended to go through his things, but the message that appeared on his unlocked phone was undeniable. Her heart thudded in her chest. The screen was filled with a single line of text. "It's time, Donovan. You and Jada are going to pay for what you did. Everything you've built will crumble. I'll make sure of it." The message was signed simply, Kendra. Jada's pulse quickened. Her mind raced back to their teenage years, years of secrets, mistakes, and a promise they'd both made to forget. But how could she forget the past when it had just come crashing back into her life with such force? Kendra. She remembered that name vividly. How could she forget? Kendra was the one they had left behind, the one whose life had been shattered by a hit-and-run accident they had been a part of, an accident that they had convinced themselves was long behind them. But this wasn't behind them, not anymore. Jada felt a cold chill creep down her spine. She wasn't ready for this. She wasn't ready for the past to come alive, to claw its way back into her world when everything had seemed so perfect. Donovan had always been the anchor, the one who held their life together. But this revelation shattered the calm. He hadn't been honest. Her breath hitched, and the room seemed to close in on her. She couldn't breathe. Everything she had built with Donovan, their marriage, their home, their future, was at risk, and she had no idea how deep this could go. Suddenly, Donovan's voice broke through the silence, pulling her out of her daze. "Jada, you okay?" He was standing in the doorway, a slight frown on his face, as he noticed her stiff posture. Jada quickly placed the phone face down on the table, her heart pounding in her ears. She tried to steady her breath, but it came out uneven. I'm fine," Jada stammered, forcing a smile that felt more like a mask than anything real. She turned her face away, praying he didn't see the panic in her eyes. "Just a little tired. Long day at work." Donovan didn't seem convinced. He walked closer, concern furrowing his brow. "What's going on?" he asked gently, stepping up behind her. His hand rested on her shoulder, and Jada almost flinched at his touch. Her mind was a mess of confusion, guilt, and fear. How could she even talk to him about this? The man she loved, the man who shared her life, was somehow connected to the very thing she had been trying to forget for years. "Donovan," Jada started, her voice shaky. "Who's Kendra?" Donovan froze. His hand dropped from her shoulder, and his face turned pale. For a moment, he didn't say anything, and in that moment, Jada knew. Jada stood up, the air around them thick with tension. "I saw the message," she said, her voice cracking. "What have you been hiding from me?" Donovan's eyes darted to the phone, then back to Jada's face. His expression was unreadable, but she could see the faintest tremor in his hand. He opened his mouth, but the words never came. The weight of silence hung heavy between them, and Jada's mind was spiraling. Had he known Kendra was still out there? Did he think he could keep this buried forever? "Donovan!" she finally shouted, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "What is this? What's going on with Kendra?" He swallowed hard, then slowly sat down across from her. "Jada." His voice was low, cautious. "I never meant for you to find out this way." Jada's heart raced. The knots in her stomach tightened. "Tell me, Donovan, what happened? What did you do?" He hesitated. "There's a reason I never told you about her, a reason we never talked about that night. Kendra, she's not someone we can just forget about, not after what happened. I never wanted to drag you into it." Jada's eyes widened as the truth started to take shape. The air between them seemed to crackle with tension, but Jada couldn't look away. "What are you saying?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Donovan took a long breath and let it out slowly. the weight of his next words crushing him. That night, the accident. Kendra was the victim. She's the one we hit. The world seemed to tilt on its axis, and Jada's stomach churned violently. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. Her mind was racing, flashing back to that night they had spent so many years pretending was a mistake. But now, standing in front of her, was the truth. A truth that she had never been prepared to face. Kendra wasn't just a ghost from their past. She was a living, breathing person. And now, she was threatening everything Jada had ever known. Donovan met Jada's gaze, and she saw the deep guilt in his eyes. Jada, she's been following us, watching us, and now she's come for revenge. The weight of his words hung in the air, thick and suffocating, and in that moment, Jada realized that nothing would ever be the same again. The woman she thought was a distant memory was suddenly very real and very dangerous. The air was thick with silence as Donovan's words reverberated in Jada's mind. "We hit her." Her hands shook at her sides, and she couldn't tell if it was from anger or fear. Everything she had built, her life, her career, her marriage, was now overshadowed by a past she thought she had left behind. "Why didn't you tell me?" Jada finally managed to ask, her voice brittle, almost breaking under the weight of the revelation. Donovan looked away, guilt evident in the downturn of his lips. "I wanted to. I really did, but after everything, I thought if we just left it in the past, we could move on. I didn't want to bring it up again. I thought it would tear us apart." Jada took a step back, processing the chaos of emotions swelling inside her. He thought not telling her was the right choice. She felt betrayed. Her trust was shattered in an instant. And yet, somewhere deep inside, there was a strange numbness forming. They were both complicit. This wasn't just Donovan's mistake. It was theirs. She didn't know what hurt more, the revelation of Donovan's deceit, or the haunting reminder that they had both run away from their past. "Donovan, I thought we were past this. I thought we were building something better." Her voice trembled. She looked away, focusing on the shadows outside their window, struggling to reconcile the man she thought she knew with the stranger sitting across from her. "I didn't want you to carry this weight. I didn't want to ruin everything we had. But now, Kendra's back, Jada. She's here for revenge, and she won't stop." The words were heavy, like stones pressing down on her chest. She didn't know what she expected him to say, but hearing him say it out loud made it feel all too real. The woman from their past wasn't just a ghost. She was alive, and her anger was just as alive, if not more so. A sudden thought struck Jada. Did Kendra know? Did she know it was you and me all along? Donovan paused, as if trying to gather the strength to tell her more. "We covered our tracks well, but Kendra, she's clever. She's always known." The room felt too small, the air thickening with dread as the realization hit Jada. Kendra had been waiting, watching, all these years, and now she was ready to tear their lives apart. Jada's mind raced. "She's been sending you those messages, hasn't she?" Donovan's face went pale, but he nodded. "Yes, and they're getting worse. It's not just threats anymore, Jada. She's coming for us." Jada stood still for a moment, absorbing the weight of the words. The perfect life they had built was slowly unraveling. All their work, all their love, it meant nothing now if the past was determined to destroy them. She swallowed hard, taking a deep breath. What exactly did she say in the message? Her heart skipped a beat as she tried to steady herself. Donovan pulled his phone out of his pocket, hesitated for a second, and then handed it to her. She took the phone from his trembling hands and read the latest message. "I will destroy everything you've built. Your love, your marriage. I'll make you pay for the mistake you made that night." You won't see me coming, but you'll feel every bit of the destruction." Jada's throat closed up as she read the words again. The woman was not just threatening them, she was promising their demise. Her stomach churned with dread. Kendra wasn't a random person from their past. She was a ghost who had never stopped haunting them. And now, Kendra had found the right moment to strike. The next morning, Jada could hardly bring herself to face Donovan. The air was thick between them, heavy with the unspoken tension that had settled overnight. She tried to shake it off, tried to push the fear from her mind, but it was like a storm waiting to break. She sat across from him at the kitchen table, avoiding eye contact as she sipped her coffee. Donovan didn't seem to notice. He was lost in his thoughts, his face clouded with guilt and anxiety. His fingers tapped nervously on the edge of his mug, a subtle sign of the stress building inside him. "I need to know what you've done to stop her," Jada said finally, breaking the silence. She set her coffee down with a thud that seemed louder than it should have been. "What are we doing to fix this, Donovan?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stared out the window, his gaze unfocused. "I've tried to go to the police, but they don't believe us. They think it's just a person from our past, someone seeking attention. But I know better. She's dangerous, Jada. She knows us too well. She knows exactly what she's doing." Jada shook her head. "That's not good enough. We can't just let her do this to us." Donovan finally looked at her. His eyes were filled with desperation, his voice pleading. "What else can we do? I don't know what else there is to fix this." Jada's mind was racing. She had to think of a way out, but every option seemed to have more consequences than the last. She had been living in fear of this day, the day when the secrets they'd buried would rise from the grave and demand to be dealt with. And now it was here. Just as Jada was about to suggest a plan, her phone buzzed on the table, cutting through the silence. Donovan's eyes widened as Jada picked it up, the screen lighting up with another message from Kendra. "The clock is ticking. You think you can hide from the truth, but I will find you. Your time is running out. Be prepared to face the past. You'll pay soon enough." Jada felt the blood drain from her face as she stared at the message, feeling the weight of Kendra's words sink in. The tension in the room ratcheted up, and she knew, without a doubt, that Kendra wasn't going to stop. Jada's phone buzzed again, and her pulse spiked. Another message from Kendra. This time, the message didn't come with an ominous warning. It was a photo. Jada opened the message slowly, already bracing herself. Her heart sank as the image loaded. The photo showed two figures, their faces half hidden by the dim lighting, walking swiftly away from the wreckage of a car. The image was grainy, but it was unmistakable. Donovan's distinct jacket and Jada's long coat. It was them. "Where did she get this?" Jada whispered under her breath, her hand shaking. She passed the phone to Donovan without saying a word. His face turned pale as he stared at the picture. His lips parted, as if struggling to find words. "I didn't think anyone saw us," Donovan muttered, his voice filled with disbelief. "I didn't think anyone could prove we were there." Jada felt the cold sting of panic. How did she know? "She was there," Jada said, her voice barely audible. "She was walking on the sidewalk that night. She saw everything. She was a witness." Donovan swallowed hard. "And she's been watching us all this time." Jada's mind raced as she tried to piece together what Kendra had planned. If Kendra had proof of their involvement, their whole lives were at risk. Their reputation, their marriage, everything they had worked for. It could all be destroyed in an instant. But why hadn't Kendra done anything sooner? Why now? Was she waiting for the perfect moment to make her move? And if Kendra really wanted revenge, what else was she capable of? Donovan, shaken, leaned back in his chair, staring at the photo. "This is it, Jada. She's not just playing games. She's serious. She wants to ruin us." The fear that had been simmering in the back of Jada's mind finally erupted into full force. She had no idea how Kendra had found them, but she knew one thing for sure. Kendra had spent years planning this moment. She was methodical, and she wasn't going to stop until she got what she wanted. As if on cue, her phone buzzed once more. Another message from Kendra. "You can't hide anymore. I know everything. I know your secrets. This is your last warning. It's time to face the truth." Jada's heart pounded. Was it too late to fix things? How could they stop someone so relentless? Donovan's face darkened. "We can't run from this anymore, Jada. We have to face it." Jada stood up and walked over to the window, her mind spinning. Was confronting Kendra the right thing to do, or would that make everything worse? The knock at the door echoed through the room, louder than it should have been. Jada's heart pounded in her chest as she stared at the door. It felt like the walls were closing in, the weight of everything suddenly too much to bear. Donovan, still staring at the photo on his phone, didn't move. Neither of them spoke for what felt like an eternity. Another knock, this time more insistent. "Do you think it's her?" Jada finally whispered, her voice tight with anxiety. Donovan's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Jada saw a flash of the man she used to know, the one who didn't show fear, the one who could handle anything. But that man was slipping away, replaced by someone who had been haunted by his past mistakes. Donovan stood up slowly, his eyes meeting hers. "I don't know, Jada," he said, voice low, "but we can't run from this anymore. If it is Kendra, then we'll deal with it together." They both turned to face the door. The silence was suffocating as the sound of another knock filled the air, this time softer, almost too deliberate. With a deep breath, Jada opened the door. Standing on the other side was a tall woman, her posture straight and poised, with long, sleek hair cascading down her back. Her eyes were dark, calculating, immediately locking onto Jada's. A cold shiver ran through Jada's body. This was Kendra. "I'm not here to make small talk," Kendra said in a calm but menacing tone, her voice smooth but full of tension. "I've been waiting for this moment. For a long time." Jada stepped back instinctively, and Donovan moved to stand beside her. The weight of Kendra's gaze felt like an accusation, one that neither of them could escape. Kendra's lips curled into a faint, almost imperceptible smile as she stepped into their home without invitation, her eyes scanning the room as if she owned the place. "I'm sorry," Jada said, her voice barely a whisper. "What is it that you want from us?" Kendra's eyes flashed with something dark. "What do I want?" she repeated, her voice growing louder with each word. "I want what's mine, and I want you both to suffer. You thought you could get away with ruining my life? You thought you could walk away from your past without facing the consequences? You're wrong. I'm here to make sure you pay." Jada felt the blood drain from her face. Donovan stiffened beside her, his eyes flicking to Jada before settling back on Kendra. The truth they'd buried so deep was now laid bare, and it was all coming back to haunt them. "I know what you did, both of you," Kendra continued, her voice growing colder. "You never thought anyone would find out, but I've been watching, I've been waiting, and now you'll pay." Jada's mind raced. She wanted to scream, to fight back, but the fear that had been building inside her all afternoon now gripped her throat. Kendra wasn't just angry, she was calculating. She knew everything. She had proof. Donovan opened his mouth to speak, but Kendra held up a hand, silencing him. "You think this is just about money or revenge?" Kendra said, stepping closer. "It's about everything you took from me. My family, my future. It's all gone because of you two." Jada clenched her fists, fighting the overwhelming urge to break down in front of Kendra. You're saying that it's our fault? That we ruined your life? She asked, her voice trembling. Kendra smirked, but there was no humor in it. You both left the scene of the accident like it was nothing. You had no idea what it did to me, to my family. My life has been nothing but hell since that night. But now you're going to face it. You're going to watch everything you've built come crashing down, and I won't stop until I've taken everything from you. Jada felt the walls close in even more. She had to fight back. She had to protect what she'd built. The organization, the life she and Donovan had made together, it was all slipping away because of the ghosts from their past. "We didn't mean to," Donovan began, but Kendra cut him off. "Save your excuses," she snapped. "You had a chance to do the right thing, and you didn't. You think I've forgotten what you did? I've been living in the shadows of that night, letting it shape me. I've become a part of it, and now I'm here to make sure you understand what it means to truly suffer." Jada's heart ached, her throat closing with emotion. She didn't know how to fix this. How could she face what they had done? How could they rebuild after everything was laid bare? Kendra took a step back, pulling out a folder from her purse and tossing it onto the coffee table between them. "This is just the beginning," she said coldly. "I've already started. I've been digging into your lives. I've already destroyed your reputation. Your career is next." Jada's eyes flicked to the folder. She didn't want to open it, but the dread clawing at her chest wouldn't let her ignore it. She reached for it, feeling Donovan's gaze on her, urging her to look. Her hands shook as she flipped the folder open. Inside was a printout of a newspaper article, the headline reading, "Famous philanthropist's past comes back to haunt her. Hit and run involving two prominent figures revealed." Her stomach turned. The article detailed their involvement in the accident, highlighting how they had left the scene, implicating them both in the eyes of the public. There was no denying it. The truth was out there, and Kendra was going to make sure it didn't go unnoticed. The weight of the situation finally hit Jada. Kendra wasn't just out for revenge. She was methodically tearing apart their lives. "Your past will haunt you forever, Jada," Kendra said, her tone laced with satisfaction. "You can't hide anymore." Kendra turned to leave, but before she could make it to the door, she stopped. "I'm not done with you yet," she said, her voice low. "I'll be back when you least expect it, and next time, there won't be any mercy." As the door slammed behind her, Jada stood frozen, her mind reeling. Donovan's hand reached for hers, but the tension in the room felt suffocating. How would they fight back against someone who seemed to have all the power? The silence in the room felt suffocating. Jada stood, staring at the door that Kendra had slammed shut, her thoughts spiraling in 1,000 directions. How had they come to this? They had buried their past, thinking it was behind them, but now it was threatening to destroy everything they had worked for. Donovan was pacing back and forth in the living room, his steps slow but deliberate. He stopped, looking at Jada, his face tight with worry. "We have to do something. We can't just let her tear us apart." Jada's eyes were fixed on the folder Kendra had left behind, still open on the table, the haunting article glaring at her. It felt as if her entire life was unraveling, one thread at a time. Her career, her relationship with Donovan, everything was at risk, and it was all because of a mistake made years ago, one they had convinced themselves was behind them. "I don't know what to do," Jada whispered. "How do we fix this? How do we fight her when she knows everything about us?" Donovan sat beside her, taking her hand in his. His touch was gentle, but his eyes were full of fear, a fear that matched hers. "We can't let her win, Jada. We have to confront this head on. She's trying to destroy us, but we can't let her. We have to find a way to prove that we've changed. We've built something good. We can't let her tear it down." Jada nodded, her mind still racing. But she has all the evidence. She knows what happened that night. How do we prove we're not the same people we were back then? Donovan leaned back, staring at the ceiling. We have to take control of the narrative. If we let her keep pulling the strings, she'll win. We have to own our past, Jada. It's the only way forward. Jada took a deep breath, her mind finally settling on one thing. They couldn't run from their mistakes any longer. They had to face them, confront the truth, and deal with the consequences, no matter how painful it was. I'm scared, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I know, Donovan replied, squeezing her hand. But we'll face it together. We always have. Before Jada could respond, her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen and saw a message from an unknown number. Her stomach twisted in knots as she opened the message. It was a photo. The image was blurry, but it was unmistakable. It was a picture of Donovan and her. Both young, standing near a car, their backs to the camera, leaving the scene of the accident. The timestamp on the photo was from the night of the crash. Jada's heart stopped. She hadn't thought about that night in years, but the image brought it all rushing back. The chaos, the fear, the panic that had driven them to make the worst decision of their lives. She showed Donovan the photo, his face drained of color as he stared at it, his eyes wide with horror. This is it, Jada said, her voice trembling. She's got us. Donovan's hands balled into fists. We need to confront her. We need to take this to the police. We need to end this once and for all. Jada shook her head, feeling the weight of the decision. If we go to the police, it'll destroy us. Our careers, everything we've built. It's not just the accident. It's everything she'll expose. The lies, the cover-up. We can't go down that road. So what do we do? Donovan asked, desperation creeping into his voice. Jada stared at the photo again, the cold, harsh reality of their past settling in her chest like a weight. We have to find Kendra. We have to confront her directly, face the truth and make things right. We can't keep hiding from it. Donovan nodded, though his expression was still clouded with doubt. But how? She's already done so much damage. We don't know what else she has on us. We'll find her, Jada said, determination rising in her voice, and we'll stop her, whatever it takes. As Jada and Donovan prepared to leave the house, determined to confront Kendra, Jada's phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a photo. It was a video. She hesitated for a moment before opening it. The video began with a shaky camera, but as the image came into focus, Jada's stomach churned. The video showed Kendra, sitting in a car, watching their home from a distance. The camera zoomed in on the window where Jada and Donovan stood just moments earlier. Kendra's voice came through the video, her tone chillingly calm. You can't hide forever. I'm always watching. The message was clear. Kendra was already steps ahead, and no matter what they did, they couldn't escape the past. The tension between Jada and Donovan only deepened after watching the video. The fear that had been gnawing at them since Kendra's arrival now felt like a choking grip around their throats. They couldn't escape her. She was everywhere, watching, waiting, and making them question everything they thought they knew about their lives. The video had shaken them both to their core. Kendra wasn't just threatening them. She was actively infiltrating their lives, taking away their sense of safety. It was no longer just about the accident. It was about the control she had over them now. We need to find her, Jada said, her voice low and tight with fear. We need to end this before it goes any further. Donovan nodded, his face grim. I know, but I don't know where to start. She's got something on us. She's got the power to ruin us. Jada paced the room, her mind racing. She couldn't let Kendra win, not again. But Kendra's grip on their lives was tightening, and Jada didn't know how to break free. We can't just keep running, Jada said, her voice breaking. We've already lost so much. My career is falling apart. People are talking about us. We're losing everything." Donovan's eyes darkened. "And we're losing each other. Every day that we let Kendra control us, we're falling apart." Jada's heart ached. "I know, but what can we do? How do we fight someone who's already ahead of us?" Donovan looked at her, his expression hardening. "We fight fire with fire. We find her, we confront her, and we take back control." Jada nodded, feeling the weight of what she was about to do, but there was no other choice. Kendra wasn't going to stop until she had destroyed everything. They had to face her, no matter what it cost them. As Jada and Donovan began to make plans, they were interrupted by a knock at the door. Donovan's eyes widened, and he stood up immediately, fear flashing in his eyes. They weren't expecting anyone. Jada froze. She knew who it was, before the knock even happened. Kendra. The knock on the door echoed like a drumbeat in Jada's chest. She could feel the air tighten around her, the weight of Kendra's presence looming even before she opened the door. Donovan stood frozen, his hand hovering near the doorknob, his face pale. He glanced at Jada, his eyes filled with silent questions. There was no time to prepare. There was no way to make this right. Jada's mind raced as she stood still. They had no more cards left to play, no more secrets to hide. Kendra was on their doorstep, and she wasn't about to leave until she had everything. "Don't open it," Donovan whispered, though he knew it was pointless. Jada nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "We don't have a choice." She reached for the doorknob, but before she could turn it, the door creaked open slightly on its own. A tall, cold figure stepped into their home without invitation, her sharp features illuminated by the dim hallway light. Kendra stood there, as poised and intimidating as ever, her eyes scanning the room like a predator. She didn't need to say anything. Her presence alone spoke volumes. "You two have been avoiding me," Kendra said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "But you can't hide from the past forever." Donovan's body tensed. "What do you want, Kendra? We've already told you." "You've told me nothing," Kendra interrupted, her lips curling into a slow, dangerous smile. "You've done nothing but run and hide, and try to pretend that nothing happened. Well, guess what? I'm still here, and I'm not leaving until I get what I'm owed." Jada's heart raced, but she stood her ground. "What do you want from us? We've apologized. We've tried to make things right." Kendra took a step forward, her eyes cold and calculating. "Apologies don't undo the damage you caused. Do you think a simple apology will make everything go away? No, it doesn't work like that. I'm here to remind you that no one forgets. Not me. Not you." Jada's mind screamed, the air in the room suffocating with tension. What was Kendra planning? What was she really after? Kendra's smile deepened, sensing the unease. "You think you've escaped the past. You think your life is perfect now, but everything you've built, it's mine to destroy." Jada's stomach churned, fear creeping under her skin. "You can't do this. We'll fight back." Kendra raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I think you've already lost. You just don't know it yet." There was a sickening pause as Kendra glanced down at her phone, tapping the screen. A moment later, Jada's phone buzzed from across the room. It was a message, one from Kendra, a single sentence. "I'll be in your life forever, Jada. Just like I've been in your past. I will keep reminding you of who you really are." Jada's hands shook as she unlocked the phone, her heart pounding. There it was again. The unsettling reminder of a past she desperately wanted to forget. Kendra wasn't just threatening her life, she was targeting her entire existence. "Is that supposed to scare me?" Jada asked, her voice trembling but defiant. Kendra smirked, walking closer, the air between them thick with tension. "It's not about scaring you, Jada. It's about showing you the truth. You and Donovan think you've moved on, but you're wrong. I hold the power now. I've always had the power." Donovan stepped forward, his hands clenched into fists. "You don't control us, Kendra. We're not afraid of you anymore." Kendra's expression faltered for a second, the hint of something dark lurking in her eyes, but then she returned to her cold, calculating smile. "You think you're in control? We'll see about that. I'm not done yet." Without another word, she turned and walked out of the door, leaving it open behind her. Jada stood frozen in place, the gravity of the situation sinking in with each passing second. Donovan grabbed her arm gently, pulling her out of her trance. "Jada, we have to do something. We can't just let her destroy us." Jada took a shaky breath. "We don't have a choice. She's already winning. She knows everything. She's always one step ahead." Donovan's eyes flickered with frustration. "Then let's take the fight to her. We need to find out what she really wants. We need to end this before it's too late." Just as Jada was about to respond, her phone buzzed once again. This time, it was an unknown number. Her heart sank as she stared at the screen, fear crawling up her spine. The message was a video. Jada opened it cautiously. The first thing she saw was Kendra's face, her eyes dark and full of intent. "You'll never be free from your past, Jada," Kendra's voice echoed through the phone. "But you still have time. I'll give you one final chance to make things right. The choice is yours, but you know what they say. The past always catches up." Jada's stomach twisted, dread coursing through her veins. She couldn't escape, and now she wasn't sure she ever would. The phone call with Kendra hung in the air like an insufferable weight. Jada and Donovan stared at the video on the phone, both feeling helpless and trapped. The threatening words from Kendra echoed in their minds, spinning like a curse they couldn't shake. Jada's thoughts raced as she tried to process everything that had happened, the implications of the video far worse than anything they had dealt with so far. Kendra wasn't just playing with them. She was toying with their entire future. And now it was clear. Kendra wasn't going to stop until she'd broken them. "We have to find out what she's really after," Donovan said, his voice filled with determination. "We can't keep letting her control us like this." Jada shook her head, the weight of the past and the present settling over her. "It's not that easy. She knows everything. Every step we take, she's watching." "But we can't just sit back and let her destroy everything," Donovan said, frustration mounting in his voice. "We have to fight back." Jada ran her hands through her hair, anxiety and exhaustion mixing in her mind. She had no answers, no clear direction, but there was one thing she knew for certain. She couldn't keep hiding from Kendra. They had to take control, confront her, and end this madness once and for all. "We'll fight," Jada said, her voice shaking but filled with resolve. "But we need to know exactly what Kendra wants. We have to end this before she takes everything." Jada and Donovan began planning their next move, determined to face Kendra head-on. But as they gathered information, another message arrived. This time, it was from Mia, a woman Jada had helped through her non-profit. "Mia's in trouble," the message read. "Kendra's gone too far. She's going after the women in your organization. It's not just you anymore. She's targeting everyone you've helped." Jada's heart skipped a beat. The stakes had just escalated, and now it wasn't just her and Donovan's lives at risk. The truth was out. Kendra wasn't done yet, and this was only the beginning. The walls felt like they were closing in. Every corner Jada turned, every conversation she had with Donovan, only made the truth more undeniable. Kendra wasn't just playing games. She was waging war on their lives. And it wasn't only their marriage at risk anymore. It was everything they had worked for, everything they believed in. Their futures, their families, the lives of the women Jada had worked tirelessly to help, all hung in the balance. Mia's message echoed in Jada's mind. Kendra's targeting the women in the organization. It's not just you anymore. The cold dread from earlier had deepened into something darker, something more profound. But there was no more time to waste. No more running. Jada and Donovan had to act, and they had to act fast. Donovan paced the room, his hand running through his hair in frustration. We can't just keep reacting to her moves. We need to take the fight to her. We need to find her, get to the root of this once and for all. Jada's voice was steady, but filled with urgency. I don't think this is about us anymore. It's not just revenge. She's been setting things up for years. She's infiltrating everything, our lives, my work. And if we don't stop her now, it'll be too late for everyone. They had already begun their investigation into Kendra's past, her motives, and the mysterious woman who had resurfaced to exact her revenge. Jada had combed through police reports, local archives, and even spoke to a few old friends from their youth. The hit-and-run accident from their teenage years had been swept under the rug, conveniently written off as a mistake by two young adults full of misguided fear. But Kendra? She hadn't forgotten. She had made sure her vengeance was calculated, inching closer with every passing year. Now, as they sat across from each other, eyes locked with an unspoken understanding, the weight of what needed to be done fell upon them. We have to stop her from going after the women in the organization, Jada said quietly, her voice trembling with the realization of how far things had gone. We can't lose anyone else. I'm with you, Jada. No more hiding. No more running. We're facing this head-on, Donovan replied, his eyes hard with resolve. They turned their attention to the next steps, preparing to confront Kendra once and for all. But deep down, Jada knew that even if they managed to stop her, even if they exposed her for what she truly was, the damage had already been done. Kendra had already left her mark on their lives, and she could never truly erase the past. The plan was simple, but fraught with risk. They had arranged to meet Kendra at an abandoned warehouse at the edge of town, a place where secrets and lies had been buried for years. Jada's heart raced as they drove there, her thoughts consumed by what was about to happen. Every step closer to the warehouse felt like a step closer to the precipice, but there was no turning back. As they arrived, the dim lights of the warehouse flickered in the distance, the air heavy with the scent of rust and dust. Donovan stepped out of the car first, his face set in a determined grimace, but Jada could see the fear beneath the surface. She took a deep breath and followed him. The night was cold, the silence deafening, save for their footsteps echoing across the empty lot. They approached the doors to the warehouse, and as they stepped inside, the tension in the air became palpable. Kendra stood in the center of the room, arms folded, her presence commanding. You finally decided to show up, Kendra's voice rang out, cold and calculating. I was starting to think you didn't have the guts to face me. Jada stood tall, her heart pounding. This ends tonight, Kendra. We're done running, done hiding. You won't control us any longer. Kendra smiled, her expression cold and dismissive. You think this is over? You think you can just walk away from the mess you've made? You'll never be free from your past. Neither will you, Donovan said, his voice shaking with barely contained anger. You've spent your life plotting revenge, but all you've done is destroy yourself. You can't keep living in the past. Kendra's eyes narrowed, a flicker of doubt crossing her face for just a moment. You don't understand. This isn't about you anymore. This is about justice, about making sure you pay for everything you've taken from me. Suddenly, Kendra reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a file, tossing it onto the ground between them. The papers scattered, and Jada felt her heart drop into her stomach as she realized what it was. It was a collection of records, photos, evidence of their involvement in the accident, but also something more damning, a photo of Jada and Donovan, captured leaving the scene of the crime, unaware that someone had been watching. "You think I wouldn't find out about your lies?" Kendra hissed. "This picture says it all. You tried to bury it, but I've been waiting for my moment. And now, here it is. Everything you've worked for, gone. Your reputation, your charity, all of it, mine to destroy." Jada's hands shook as she looked at the photo, but she didn't let the fear show. "You think this is what's going to break us? You can't ruin us with this. We're not the same people we were back then. We've changed, and we're going to make sure you pay for the harm you've caused." Kendra's smile faltered for just a moment, but it was enough. Donovan stepped forward, his voice steady. "We've come a long way since that night. We've faced our demons, but it's time you face yours." With a sudden motion, Jada grabbed the file and hurled it to the ground. "You can't keep living in the past. It's over. You've lost." Kendra's face twisted into an expression of fury, her eyes wild with the desperation of someone who knew they had lost control. "You think this is over? You think you've won? This is just the beginning, Jada. You'll regret this." But before she could act, the sound of sirens echoed from outside the warehouse. Police lights flashed through the broken windows. Kendra froze, her eyes widening in disbelief. "We called the cops," Donovan said quietly, his voice steady now. "This ends tonight." As the authorities flooded the warehouse, Kendra was apprehended. For the first time, Jada felt the weight of years of fear lift from her shoulders. Kendra's reign of terror was over. In the weeks that followed, Jada and Donovan faced the aftermath of their confrontation with Kendra. They had exposed the truth, both the secrets they had buried and the devastation Kendra had wrought. But even though Kendra was in custody, the damage was done. Jada's career was shaken, but the truth had come out, and she was more committed than ever to continuing her work with the non-profit. She focused on rebuilding, making sure the women she helped would never have to suffer from someone like Kendra again. As for Donovan, the road to redemption was long. He knew he would have to prove to Jada and to himself that he was worthy of her trust again. But in the end, they had survived the storm together. And as they stood side by side, looking out at the new life they were building, Jada knew one thing. They had finally faced their past. They had confronted the darkness that had haunted them for so long, and in doing so, they had given themselves a chance at something better. Their future was uncertain, but for the first time in years, it felt like it was theirs to shape. As Jada sat at her desk one quiet evening, the storm of recent events still fresh in her mind, her phone buzzed against the wooden surface. She flinched. It had been weeks since Kendra was taken away, weeks since she and Donovan had started the slow process of rebuilding their shattered lives. And yet, the anxiety lingered, like a shadow that refused to fade. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the device, a sinking feeling twisting her stomach before she even saw the screen. Unknown number. Jada hesitated, her pulse quickening. She had learned the hard way that ghosts from the past never stayed buried. Taking a deep breath, she tapped the notification. One new message. "You think Kendra was the end? You don't even know the half of it. Your nightmare is far from over." Jada's breath hitched. Her grip tightened around the phone as the walls of her home suddenly felt too close, too suffocating. She swallowed hard, her mind racing. Kendra is locked up. She's gone. This had to be a mistake, a sick prank, someone trying to feed off the drama that had nearly destroyed her life. But then, her phone buzzed again. Another message. This time, it wasn't just text. It was a video. With a shaking hand, she pressed play. The screen flickered to life, and her blood ran cold. It was footage from inside a dimly lit prison cell. The camera was unsteady, moving toward a figure sitting in the shadows, their back against the wall. The figure shifted, as if sensing the presence of whoever was recording. And then, slowly, chillingly, the person turned their head toward the camera. Kendra. A slow, deliberate smile curled on her lips, her eyes burning with something dangerous. And then she spoke. "Did you really think it was just me?" The video cut to black. Jada shot to her feet, her heart slamming in her chest. There was more than Kendra, more than she had ever realized. The past wasn't just haunting her, it was hunting her. And this time, it wasn't just Kendra pulling the strings. If you thought Jada and Donovan had escaped their past, think again, because this story is far from over. Who sent that message? Who's been watching from the shadows? And just how deep does this conspiracy go? Make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications, because in part 2, the truth will be darker than you ever imagined. Trust me, you won't see this twist coming.